In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to delete a pivot table or pivot chart report in Excel. To get started, open Microsoft Excel and go to the workbook that contains the pivot table or pivot chart you want to remove. This is a simple task, but it helps to understand one important detail before you delete anything. If you no longer need a pivot table or pivot chart, you can remove it without affecting the original source data. In other words, deleting the report does not erase the underlying data it was built from. That makes this a safe cleanup step when you want to simplify a worksheet or remove reports you no longer use. Let's begin with deleting a pivot table. First, click anywhere inside the pivot table. This tells Excel which report you're working with and brings up the pivot table tools at the top of the window. If you don't click inside the pivot table first, the correct options may not appear, so make sure that part is selected. Once you're inside the pivot table, go to the Pivot Table Analyze tab. From there, look for the Select option, and then choose Entire Pivot Table. This is an important step because it ensures that the whole pivot table is selected, not just a single cell or section of it. If you only select part of the pivot table manually, pressing Delete may remove only some values instead of the full report. After the entire pivot table is selected, press the Delete key on your keyboard. Excel will remove the pivot table from the worksheet. At that point, the report is gone, and the space on the sheet is cleared. Again, this action removes only the pivot table itself, not the original data source behind it. If you're working with a pivot chart instead, the idea is similar. Make sure the chart itself is selected, then delete it from the sheet. Just like with a pivot table, removing the visual report does not damage the source data used to create it. A helpful tip is to take a quick look at your worksheet after deleting the report, especially if your workbook contains multiple pivot tables or charts. This helps confirm that you removed the correct item and that the layout still looks the way you want. That's all it takes to delete a pivot table or pivot chart report in Excel. It's a quick way to keep your workbook organized while preserving the original data for future use.